The first blast shook my walls, metal slamming metal before I even reached the door. A 12-foot steel wall was rising across my ranch entrance, workers welding like they were sealing a crime scene. Miranda Cross, the HOA president, stepped forward, smiling, waving legal papers as sparks rained behind her. "You've got 48 hours to leave," she said. "This road belongs to us now." I didn't argue. I just read the signature on the last page. Mine. A signature I never wrote. And before this wall is finished, they're going to learn who they actually forged it from. Miranda didn't wait for the steel wall to cool. She strode straight toward the welders, snapping her fingers like she owned the dirt under their boots. "Keep going," she ordered. "Don't stop for him." The crew hesitated when I stepped forward, but one look from her, and they went right back to drilling bolts into the frame. Sparks scattered across the gravel like angry fireflies. "That little ranch of yours has been dragging down property values for years," Miranda said, lowering her sunglasses just enough for me to catch the contempt underneath. "We're done tolerating it." Her husband, Victor, stood behind her with his arms crossed, expression carved from stone. "Courts love clean paperwork," he said. "And we have clean paperwork." Tyler Rhodes, the HOA's puffed-up vice president, lifted his phone, already recording me. "Smile," he muttered. "HOA wants a record in case you try something." Behind them, a delivery truck idled helplessly at the new barricade. My daughter Lila stood beside it, backpack slung over one shoulder, staring at the blocked road she used every morning. Miranda glanced at her without a flicker of sympathy. "She can walk," Miranda said. "Builds character." Lila looked at me with confusion and rising fear. I felt it too tight, sharp, but I kept my voice steady. "You've overstepped," I told Miranda quietly. She laughed. "Correction, we've upgraded, and you're out of options." But she was wrong, because while she was busy putting up a wall, I was already planning how to bring it and her down. The steel wall wasn't even finished when the first insult hit. A fluorescent orange sticker big as a dinner plate was slapped onto my gate visual nuisance HOA notice. The ink was still wet. Someone had printed it in a hurry. I peeled it off slowly, hearing gravel crunch behind me. Tyler Rhodes was standing there, pretending to scroll on his phone while obviously recording me. "First of many," he said. "The board thinks your ranch needs a little motivation." I didn't answer. I just walked past him toward the porch, where another envelope sat, no stamp, no address. Highlighted warnings, fines, complaints about tractor odor, loose hay, and barn clutter visible from HOA trails that weren't even supposed to reach my land. Inside, my daughter Leela stared at her phone, jaw tight. "They're calling us squatters in their group chat," she said quietly, "saying you're refusing to cooperate with community standards." I pushed the laptop open. The county land records page blinked to life. Something was off parcel, boundaries, adjusted access approvals, missing fields, amateur edits, sloppy. They weren't just harassing, they were rewriting reality around me, and they thought I wouldn't notice. By noon I was standing inside the Silverbrush County Land Office boots, still dusty shirt streaked from morning chaos. The front desk clerk froze when she saw me. "Mr. Hartley, I thought you'd already resigned." Resigned. The word hit like a nail driven sideways. "I didn't," I said. Her eyes darted away. "That's not what we were told." I didn't argue. I swiped my badge at the restricted records door. Inside, humming fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I pulled up my personnel file. My stomach tightened. A resignation letter, dated last week, with my signature, and worse, a digital approval naming Caleb Dunn as interim land commissioner. Caleb, a man I'd only ever trusted with clerical tasks, someone who treated policy like it was optional if inconvenient. Footsteps approached fast. Caleb burst in, gripping a stack of papers like a shield. He stopped cold when he saw me at the console. "Evan, it's not what it looks like." I held up the forged letter. He swallowed, hard sweat forming along his receding hairline. "Miranda said everything was already approved," he whispered. "She said you were stepping down voluntarily." Voluntarily. Another word twisted out of shape. This wasn't a boundary dispute. It was a staged coup of my authority and my land. My phone buzzed. Lila's voice trembled the moment I answered. "Dad, they're expanding the wall." The road crackled under my truck's tires as I sped back. I didn't even reach the gate before I saw it, the steel line now snaking across the western fire access path, the last usable route into Cedar Ridge. A delivery truck for our feed supply sat stranded. The driver shrugged helplessly. "Sorry, Evan. They said this road's closed. I can't unload anywhere else. We already lost one horseboarding client last month. This delivery was the difference between making next week's expenses or not." Behind the truck, my elderly neighbor Walt Brenner stood arguing with a foreman. Walt leaned on his cane, the same man who once pulled me out of a ditch during a winter storm. "You can't weld across this access," Walt yelled. "This violates state code." One of the workers shoved him aside, hard. Leela caught the moment on her phone, her hands shaking. "Dad, he fell," she said, voice cracking. I crouched beside Walt. He nodded, brushing dust off his jeans, but the shame in his eyes cut deeper than the injury. This wasn't just paperwork anymore. They were hurting people, and they were stealing my livelihood piece by piece. Something inside me cooled, like a flame snapping into a razor-thin line. They wanted a war, fine, but they'd be fighting someone who knew every legal inch of this county better than they knew their own driveways. Blue and red lights washed across the half-finished steel barricade. A sheriff's deputy stepped out of his Chevy Tahoe, hand resting on his holster, not drawn but ready. "We got a report of a man threatening construction workers with a firearm," he said. Miranda practically materialized behind him. "That would be him," she said sweetly. "He's obstructing lawful development." Lawful. She spit the word like it was an absolute truth, not a forged fantasy they had built. I kept my hands visible. I didn't threaten anyone. "Do you possess a firearm on your person?" the deputy asked, protocol, smooth and unbothered by context. "No." Miranda crossed her arms. "He's unstable, officer. He's been yelling, refusing instructions, interfering with property improvements." She gestured at the steel wall like it was a civic masterpiece. The deputy turned to me. "Look, sir, on paper this road sale is legitimate. If you disagree, you need to take it up through civil court." I bit down my frustration. Hard. Paper. That was the word. The HOA owned the paper right now because they forged it, filed it, weaponized it, but the true records, those were still mine, and I wasn't done. Night bled across the ranch, the steel wall glowing faintly under the floodlights they'd left on like a cage illuminated for display. I didn't go home. I drove straight back to the land office. The building was empty at this hour, the kind of quiet that lets you hear your own pulse. I unlocked the archive room. Marla Green, my most trusted deputy clerk, arrived minutes later, hair still damp from a rushed shower, worry lines tight across her forehead. "What did they do?" she whispered. "Everything I said. And worse." Together, we pulled the files: Caleb's appointment paperwork, the road sale transfer, boundary revisions with missing public notices, permit approvals rubber-stamped with fake codes. Every page was a blade pointed at my ranch. Then I opened my recorder and played the audio from hours earlier, when Caleb cornered me near the parking lot and tried offering a solution for $18,000 under the table. Marla covered her mouth. "Evan, this isn't just misconduct. This is criminal." I nodded. "And Miranda and Victor are behind every piece of it." The rage was there, but it wasn't loud anymore. It was engineered, focused, moving through me with purpose. I dialed Sheriff Rowan Hale. "Rowan," I said, "we need an emergency presence at tomorrow's county board meeting. Bring documentation forms." A pause, then steady. "Understood. I'll be there." I hung up and looked through the glass toward the distant glow of the steel wall. Tomorrow wasn't just about proving forgery. Tomorrow was about taking back everything they stole, even the truth. The county boardroom felt different that morning, too full, too still. Rows of residents packed every seat, murmuring under their breath as the steel wall photos flickered across a projector. The tension pressed like weight on my collarbone, but I kept my expression even. At the center table, Caleb Dunn shuffled papers with trembling fingers. Beside him sat Miranda Cross, immaculate as always, chin lifted like she'd walked into a charity luncheon instead of a reckoning. Victor Cross leaned back, arms folded, confidence carved into every line of his jaw. Board Chair Ellison tapped her microphone. "This emergency session will review the road transfer, recent boundary modifications, and the question of Commissioner Hartley's resignation." Miranda smiled with slow, rehearsed grace. "We're relieved the board is taking this seriously. Our community acted in good faith, based on documents approved by the interim commissioner." Caleb cleared his throat. "Due to urgent development timelines, certain filings were expedited." I stood. The room quieted instantly. "With respect," I said, "there is no interim commissioner." A ripple ran through the crowd. Miranda tilted her head. "Evan, please. The county can't function without proper leadership. You step down." I placed a single sheet on the table. "The forged resignation." "Did I?" I asked softly. Caleb's face drained. Miranda's lips twitched. Board Chair Ellison stared at the signature comparison projected on the screen. "Mr. Hartley, are you saying this document is falsified?" I met her eyes, steady, controlled. "I'm saying it's a felony." Gasps, chairs scraping. All eyes pivoted toward Miranda. Her posture wavered for the first time. The confrontation had begun. I slid the next set of documents across the table, each one an indictment waiting to unfold. Boundary maps altered without public notice. Permit approvals missing mandatory signatures. A road sold for a fraction of its assessed value. And every change tied to these two signatures. I tapped the screen, Caleb Dunn and Miranda Cross. Caleb rubbed his temples. Victor stiffened. Miranda forced a laugh, forced because the room could taste the fear beneath it. Evan, anyone can claim paperwork was mishandled, but without intent, I hit play on my recorder. Caleb's voice filled the room. For $18,000, I'll adjust the records. Miranda and Victor want everything finalized before he figures it out. They promised compensation. I'll make sure his land gets reclassified so they can force the sale. Caleb lurched forward. That was taken out of context. Miranda shot him a murderous glare. Victor's jaw ticked once. Board members whispered, shocked, outraged. The community murmured louder now, betrayal thick in the air. I kept going, methodical, focused. These shell companies, I pulled up a list. They were used to buy surrounding parcels. Registered under Victor Cross, same address as his law office. Victor stood abruptly. I did nothing illegal. Strategic acquisitions are. And this I interrupted. Clicking the last slide is the timeline showing your purchases immediately after the forged resignation was filed. Silence. Every lie they'd built was collapsing under its own weight. Miranda clasped her hands so tightly, her knuckles whitened. This is character assassination. The HOA operates within its rights to protect. Protect, I leaned closer. You welded a ranch shut. You assaulted an elderly neighbor through your contractors. You weaponized, forged documents to take land that wasn't yours. A woman in the crowd, one of Miranda's own residents, stood. We never agreed to any of this, she said. You lied to all of us. Miranda's composure finally cracked, and the board was done listening. Sheriff Rowan Hale stepped forward from the back of the room. His boots echoed against the tile like a gavel strike. Mister? Done, he said, calm but absolute. Based on evidence presented, my office has grounds to detain you for questioning regarding forgery, bribery, and falsification of public records. Caleb rose slowly, shaking his head. I didn't do this alone, Miranda hissed. Shut up. But fear strips pride clean. Caleb pointed at her with a trembling hand. She planned everything. Victor handled the legal cover. They told me to sign. They told me the commissioner had already stepped down. Victor slammed his palm on the table. You incompetent coward. No further statements, Sheriff Hale cut in. Deputies moved toward Caleb. The board members leaned into their microphones, one after another. I moved to freeze all Silverbrush HOA filings. I second. Road transfer is void pending investigation. All boundary adjustments reverted. Effective immediately. Miranda's mouth parted, but no sound emerged. Her perfect poise was gone, shattered under the weight of a truth she couldn't out-talk. Residents who once feared her now stared with open disgust. Betrayal hits hardest when it comes wrapped in leadership. Sheriff Hale turned to Victor and Miranda. You two will remain available for formal interviews. Do not leave the county. Victor's confidence evaporated. Miranda looked at me, really looked. Not with superiority, not with smugness, but with the dawning realization that the man she tried to erase was the one person she should never have crossed. Deputies escorted Caleb out as camera flashes burst like tiny explosions. I exhaled slowly, the steel band around my chest finally loosening. The wall outside wasn't gone yet, but inside this room, the real one had just collapsed. The room didn't empty after Caleb was let out. No one even reached for the door. People stayed rooted in their seats, as if stepping out too soon would break the collective breath we were all holding. Board Chair Ellison leaned back, visibly shaken. Residents murmured shock, anger, relief, all swirling in the same air. For the first time since the steel wall went up, the tension in my ribs eased. A woman from Silverbrush Estates, the same one who had challenged Miranda minutes earlier, came to the podium. Commissioner Hartley, she said, steady but emotional, we didn't know. None of us agreed to this. We thought Miranda was enforcing community rules, not stealing land. Others nodded. A few apologized openly. It wasn't pity or guilt, it was the realization that they'd been led into a war they never asked for. Then Walt Brenner, leaning on his cane, rose slowly. They shoved me when I tried to defend Evan's rights, he said, voice gravelly but firm. But that shove woke up this whole county. The room responded with quiet applause. Not loud, respectful. I felt Leela's hand slip into mine from behind my chair. You okay? She whispered. For the first time in weeks, I said, and I meant it. Board Chair Ellison cleared her throat, lifting a stack of fresh documents the clerk had just handed her. "This board has reached a unanimous decision," she announced, voice regaining authority. Effective immediately, the following actions are entered into county record. The room stilled. First, the road transfer is null and void. All access rights revert to their original public status. A ripple of relief moved through the residents. Second, the steel barrier erected on Cedar Ridge Ranch must be removed within 72 hours at the expense of the Silverbrush HOA. Miranda's shoulders tensed, but she didn't speak. Third, all boundary modifications approved under Mr. Dunn's forged appointment are reversed. Cedar Ridge Ranch returns to its legally recognized borders. Ellison paused. And finally, Miranda Cross is suspended as HOA president pending internal review and potential civil penalties. Victor's face drained to ash. A clerk stepped forward with the official boundary restoration order. "Commissioner Hartley," she said, "your signature is required." I took the pen from her, a simple black fountain pen, heavier than it looked. My father once used the same kind for signing cattle agreements and land deeds. He always said a signature should feel like a promise. I signed. The keystrokes of clerks updating the official map echoed softly through the room. And just like that, Cedar Ridge Ranch had its name back. A resident stepped up, Anya Delridge, known for leading community events in Silverbrush Estates. "We're calling a special vote tonight," she announced, "to replace the HOA board completely. Many of us are done being ruled by fear." The applause this time was louder, clearer, like a weight being lifted off the community rather than just off my land. Victor tugged at Miranda's sleeve, urging her toward the exit, but she resisted long enough to look back at me. Her eyes were no longer sharp or calculating. They held something closer to disbelief. All that power, all that control, gone in minutes. And she had forged the signature of the one person capable of dismantling her entire plan with a single meeting. Leela squeezed my arm again. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "We did it." People came up to shake my hand, farmers, HOA residents, even a few who once avoided me at grocery stores. It wasn't celebration, it was unity. A community stitching itself back together after being torn by deception. Outside the boardroom windows, the sun had begun to dip, coloring the county building gold. A symbolic end to the longest week of my life. As I stepped toward the exit, Miranda and Victor hurried through a side door to avoid the crowd. Their silhouettes disappeared down the hallway, smaller than I'd ever seen them. They built a wall to box me out. Instead, they boxed themselves into a corner they couldn't escape. And as the boardroom doors closed behind me, one thought settled deep and calm. Some walls aren't meant to stand, especially the ones built on lies.